being found in Curtis's house and denying having any kind of relationship with him. Both Sophie and Curtis are brought to the police station for questioning. Sophie now sits in front of Detective Luca and Roshan and is being asked about her relationship with Curtis. She finally admits that she had an affair with him 6 months ago. Her reason for visiting Curtis was to know for sure whether he killed her husband. Sophie also reveals that she initiated the relationship with Curtis and ended it because he had started to fall in love with her. Before she leaves, Roshan tells her that if Curtis is really the culprit, she will have to testify about her relationship publicly. Sophie then returns home to Paya, who informs her that Nick's workplace has organized a memorial for him the following day. The next morning, everyone is in the living room when Ethan sees the video of Curtis being arrested. Sophie tries to stop them from watching it, but Paya insists they do. Ethan recognizes Curtis as his school teacher, but is confused why he would be arrested. Paya realizes that Curtis's arrest has something to do with Sophie. She takes her aside and asks her if she was at the police station last night. It is finally revealed to Paya that Curtis and Sophie were having an affair. An enraged Paya reminds Sophie that if Curtis is the one who killed Nick, it will all be her fault. As Paya barges out of the room, we see Ethan has been listening to their conversation all along. Without saying anything, he takes his skateboard and goes out, in spite of Sophie asking him to stay home. She goes out to look for him, but is mobbed by the reporters again. She somehow manages to get past them and goes to the park he usually skateboards in. Sophie doesn't find Ethan there, but she notices a woman nearby, watching her. She had seen her earlier at their house as well. Sophie calls the woman out for following her. The nervous lady introduces herself as Emma Beasley. To Sophie's disbelief, she claims to have been dating Nick before his death. Emma explains that she is from LA, where Nick used to travel frequently. They met on a dating app called Too Smitten, where Nick went by the name Danny Walters. Sophie doesn't buy into the woman's bullshit at first, but begins to believe her when she mentions they started talking in March, around the time Nick found out about Sophie cheating on him. She curses at Emma, gets inside her car, and breaks down crying. Paya calls her, informing her that they have found Ethan. Sophie goes to them and asks Ethan to come home with her. She also tells Paya about her encounter with Emma. Paya looks for the Too Smitten app on her phone and finds a deactivated profile by the name Danny Walters. She assures Sophie that she will find out if Emma's story is true. Then, Paya contacts her computer genius friend, Vince, and asks him to find out about Danny Walters. Later, the TV shows the news of Curtis being arrested. People start to conspire about Curtis's relationship with Sophie, and rumors about their affair start going around. Sophie asks her family to turn the TV off and leave for Nick's workplace for the memorial. There, Sophie is approached by one of Nick's students, Jenny, who vaguely tells her that Nick was close to a girl on the basketball team before Matt intervenes and takes Sophie away. The memorial starts, and Matt gives a speech. Sophie gets overwhelmed and walks out. On her way out, a woman insults her, resulting in Sophie throwing a glass of water in her face. She immediately regrets it and cries as the others escort her out. At night, Paya shows her the pictures from Danny's deactivated profile and confirms that it was, in fact, Nick's. He had been cheating on Sophie for 2 years. A heartbroken Sophie cries while holding her husband's picture. In the following scene, we are shown Emma and Nick together on a bed. Just a few days before his disappearance, she received flowers and balloons from Nick while at work. The day he disappeared, she found out while she was at the gym. Emma already knew Nick was married, but he had promised to divorce Sophie after Ethan graduated high school. Emma followed Nick's case closely and wanted to be around people he knew to grieve his death, so she flew to Oakland. Strangely though, she claimed to be Nick's fiancé to get a bereavement discount for the flight. That day, when she met Sophie, she had come to her home to tell her about the affair. While waiting outside Sophie's house, a reporter named Ben Park gives her his card, assuming she is a reporter as well. After her encounter with Sophie, Emma comes back to her hotel room and hallucinates that Nick is sitting beside her on the bed. Emma seems to be losing her mind over him. The next day, she meets Detective Roshan and tells him whatever she knows about Nick in hopes of helping the case. She then goes to Nick's work and happens to meet Matt. She tells him she is just one of Nick's friends. After that, Emma sneaks into Nick's office and is found by his coworker, Dawn. Dawn makes the woman leave, and at the same time, Paya arrives at the place. She meets Matt and asks him if he knew about Nick's affair, since he accompanied Nick on his LA trips several times. However, Matt seems to know nothing about the matter. Meanwhile, at home, Sophie is looking at casket options for Nick when she gets a message from an unknown number calling her names. Soon, she begins receiving several such messages. Someone had leaked her phone number and credit card details online. Then, Paya goes to meet Emma in her hotel room. Emma is surprised but happy to see Nick's sister. Paya asks her if whatever she is saying is true. Instead of answering, Emma says that Nick told her about his and Paya's relationship. She knows that they went through some stuff together as kids that brought them closer than ever. Hearing this, Paya believes that Emma was, in fact, in contact with Nick. She gives Emma her number for any emergencies and leaves. At night, when everyone is at home, Sophie's mother Ruby and Nick's mother Andrea get into an argument after Andrea insults Sophie for cheating. The situation in the family is grim. At the same time, Emma receives a call from a man who threatens her to go back to LA as soon as possible, leaving Nick's family behind. Emma freaks out after the call and drives away from the hotel in her car. She calls Paya in panic and leaves her a voicemail. Soon she realizes that she is being followed. The car swerves, crashing her car off the road. Later, Emma is in the hospital, talking to Roshan about the encounter. Roshan now believes that Nick's murder has something to do with Emma, and the person who called her was probably the perpetrator. Paya arrives at the hospital and listens to Emma's story. When Paya and Roshan are alone, Roshan informs her that they have found 3 other dating profiles that were all Nick's. The pattern shows that he created profiles on different sites and talked to a different girl on each of them. Eventually, after they broke up, he deleted the profiles. Paya lays all of this information on Emma, thinking she deserves to know it. She also reveals that one of the girls Nick talked to is named Mandy Harrison, an artist based in LA. When Emma returns to LA, she looks for Mandy's socials and asks her to meet. The two talk to each other and find out that Nick had said the exact same thing to both of them, but Mandy had looked through his lies and broken up with him, while Emma believed him. Mandy had also made a painting of Nick, which Emma buys from her. She feels betrayed by Nick and burns the painting in frustration. She also calls the reporter, Ben Park, and agrees to do an interview with him as Nick's girlfriend outside of marriage. In the interview, she suggests that Nick abused her emotionally, so the things written on the cards might just be true. If the interview is broadcasted, Nick's reputation will go downhill quickly. Ben is overjoyed to be able to land such an important interview. His boss asks him to find out about other women who were involved with Nick online. Later, Ben gets an idea to visit the Brewers' home to tell them about Emma's interview and manipulate Sophie into giving an interview in order to save Ben's reputation. He poses as a delivery man and enters the house while recording with his phone. Paya soon finds him and threatens to call the police. He tells them about Emma's interview and leaves his card on the floor for them to contact him. Later, Ben is at his home with his boyfriend, Cameron. He goes into several dating apps to look for more of Nick's profiles, if there are any. Cameron helps him search for the profiles. Meanwhile, Paya calls Roshan home and tells him about Emma's interview, only to be told that the police cannot do anything because Emma didn't break the law by talking to the reporters. In fact, since the perpetrator doesn't want Emma to come forward with her story, the interview might help them catch him in case he makes a wrong move. Paya is angered to know that the police are treating her brother's reputation as collateral damage. That night, Ben is on the internet looking up comments on Nick's posts. One comment in particular catches his attention. The comment is written by a girl named Jenny, who approached Sophie during the memorial. She fights the people who defend Nick, calling his supporters losers. The very next day, Ben goes to meet her and asks her if she had a feud with Nick. Jenny hesitantly tells him to talk to another team member named Tara Wilson. Jenny had heard Nick fighting with Tara over something a while back. After talking to Jenny, Ben goes to a restaurant where Tara waitresses and asks her about Ben. However, Tara dismisses them, saying that it is nothing important. When Ben returns to the office later, he is surprised to find out that Sophie has agreed to do an interview with them before they broadcast Emma's interview, so the narrative could change a little. However, Ben's boss removes him from the case for trespassing in the Brewers' home and puts another employee in for the interview. Distressed at the fact, Ben returns home, only to find that Cameron has somehow managed to find one of Nick's dating profiles that had been unknown until then. Nick's name is Jeremy Wilkerson in the app. They have the profile, but they have to gain access to it somehow. Cameron suggests they pay someone to hack it on the dark web. The two manage to get access to his personal information, including the number of messages he has sent to women. They see that most messages have been sent to a woman named Maggie Oxley from Sacramento. While trying to look for the girl online, they do not find her socials, but they are able to find a bookstore on her profile picture. Without wasting any time, the two drive to Sacramento the following day. The bookstore manager reveals that Maggie is actually a cat. When shown the picture from the profile, he recognizes the woman as Sarah Burton, a woman who killed herself 4 months ago. The couple is shocked to hear the information. They go through Sarah's socials and find out where her brother Simon lives. Cameron suggests they just hand the information to the police, but Ben is excited to do the research on his own. Cameron is still skeptical about the plan, but drives Ben to Simon's house anyway. He stays outside in the car as Ben goes in to talk to him. Ben knocks on the apartment door, but no one answers. But he doesn't give up and looks under the doormat to find a key. He sneaks into Simon's apartment and snoops around for any clue that relates to Sarah. He finds a box under the bed which has Sarah's stuff inside, including her phone. Meanwhile, Cameron sees Simon getting inside the apartment building and calls Ben to alert him. Simon comes inside the apartment and starts to smoke as Ben sneaks out behind him. Simon hears the noise and chases after Ben, but Ben and Cameron manage to get away before the man can catch them. Cameron is furious with Ben for treating the case as a game and doing illegal things, so Ben doesn't tell him about the phone he stole. At night, Ben retrieves data from Sarah's phone and successfully finds the messages between her and Nick. In the messages, Sarah seems to be in a severely bad mental condition. She even threatens Nick that she will kill herself, but Nick is nonchalant to her problems. Ben realizes that Sarah killed herself because of Nick. The following day, he brings all the evidence to his boss and asks her to let him interview Sophie. Meanwhile, Sophie is nervous about the interview. Paya comforts her and tells her that it will be fine. Sophie's attorney helps her with the answers to the questions she will potentially be asked while they drive to the interview. At the same time, Ben is also preparing for it. For the first few minutes, the interviews go as planned. Ben asks her several questions about her affair and Nick's character, and Sophie answers them all truthfully. Then, he mentions Sarah's death, which throws Sophie off guard. She claims that she doesn't know what he is talking about, but Ben shows her the final conversations between Nick and Sarah, which prompted Sarah to commit suicide. Sophie panics and walks out of the interview, giving the people more to talk about. Later, they are at home when the interview is aired on television. The last few messages between Nick and Sarah are even enacted as a phone call to make it seem more personal. The detectives are furious as to how they didn't know about Sarah. Sarah's brother Simon also watches the interview in anger. The scene then changes to 6 months earlier. Simon, who works for a tech company, sees his sister swooning over a man she is dating online. He asks her to be careful at first, but then approves of their relationship after seeing how happy the guy makes her. She had been suicidal for a very long time, but after talking to Jeremy, she has started doing the things she enjoys again. However, when Simon visits her some weeks later, she is in the worst mental condition she has ever been in. Simon asks her why she hasn't been to work for over a week, when she reveals that Jeremy is actually married to someone. She breaks down crying, saying that she doesn't want to live anymore, while Simon comforts her. A few days later, Simon is with his friend Daryl at work when he gets a call from Sarah. She cries hysterically while apologizing to him. Simon figures out something is terribly wrong and runs to her apartment, only to find her dead. Back in the present, Simon is at work when Detective Roshan visits him. Simon composes himself and greets the detective. Roshan asks him if Sarah revealed the nature of her relationship with Nick, but Simon lies and says she didn't. When asked where he was the day Nick was kidnapped, Simon tells him that he was fishing in the Russian River with his friend Daryl. Roshan asks for Daryl's number and leaves after. Right after the meeting, Simon texts Daryl, asking him not to answer his phone if someone calls him. At the same time, Roshan gets a call from Paya, who demands to know if he is doing something about the case. Roshan tells her he is in Sacramento to speak with Simon and hangs up. After the call, Paya notices Nick's pictures from around the house inside a box. She goes to the room where everyone is enjoying a family dinner and asks who took the pictures off the wall. Sophie admits to taking them down because she is ashamed to be Nick's wife. The two step aside into a room where Paya says that the text messages didn't sound like Nick wrote them. However, Sophie claims it will be easier if they accept the fact and move on. Paya takes the last picture off the wall and goes to her house. Meanwhile, back in Sacramento, Simon calls Daryl to his apartment and teaches him what he should say while being interrogated. Daryl freaks out and talks about turning Simon in. At last, Simon threatens Daryl to go with the story, clearly hiding something. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.